Facebook Live and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. And welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're here and ready to go for episode number 39.
39 sounds awesome, just like football being back. It puts a smile on everybody's face.
Yep, football is back. Big Ten football is coming back in 1 month and 2 days. That said, we did have some bad news coming from the college football world just a couple of hours ago when we found out that Notre Dame is having their game against Wake Forest postponed. It was supposed to take place this Saturday, but yesterday, 7 players tested positive for the Rona. So just when you think you're out of the woods, just when you think things are getting better, that Rona pops right back up and says, hey, I'm still here.
Yeah, a good reminder for all the teams to make sure they're doing everything they possibly can. They're creating a bubble and anything else that you can do, man. Wash your hands. Then you could still end up getting things canceled. But, yeah, you know what? I like to focus in on what's going on the field, but it's never too far away thinking about that there could be issues, but we'll just cross our fingers there.
Yeah, and actually one of the good things about college football is this week we have the SEC returning because I don't know about you, but I was trying to watch some of the games this weekend and they just weren't all that appealing. I mean, Oklahoma State struggling against Tulsa was probably one of the highlights of the weekend. I didn't even watch much of the Miami versus Louisville game. We're 2 weeks into the college football season, at least in terms of the Big 12 and the ACC, and we haven't really had any marquee matchups. I know the SEC schedule is weak to start off. Their week 1 slate is they have the cupcakes going up against the powerhouses, but at least there'll be some more action to choose from.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend, I actually watched just a minute, of football. Watched Navy, BYU for about a minute, and then the following week I watched a little bit of Duke at Notre Dame, get a feel of that. Probably about an hour. I actually fell asleep on the couch that night. I watched Clemson in the primetime window, and that's when I looked at the menu this past Saturday, the only game that looked appealing was the U at Louisville. So I took that game in. It was a shootout. Eric King at quarterback. Yeah, the U looked pretty good. The turnover chain was pretty cool. So, yeah, it felt good. And you know what? Knowing that the Big Ten was back and that they will join the proceedings coming up, as you said, in just over a month, it felt a lot better. It felt like, a full symphony was there, not just the flute over in the corner.
Yep, and we'll definitely get to the Big Ten schedule, but we want to thank everybody who is watching today's show, whether you're doing so on YouTube, Facebook Live, or Twitch, because we do have 5 fantastic chapters for you here on episode 39. Thank also those who are listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, and make sure that you participate in each show by sending in your comments via Facebook Live, via Twitch, or via YouTube. Let's take a look now at today's book. In the second chapter, as you can see, Matt Stafford didn't play all that well, and he took a knee during the national anthem like Colin Kaepernick. We'll assess number 9's approval rating in Detroit. In the third chapter, the Big Ten schedule is out. How will Michigan and Michigan State fare? And did the Big Ten give a big scheduling advantage to one of the powerhouse teams? In the fourth chapter, Ron Gardenhire on Saturday abruptly retired before the game. Who should replace him, and will it even matter? And then in the fifth chapter, we've got some betting advice for you in the major wager. Dennis, let's start off, though, with the first chapter. And, that takes us to another same old Lions Sunday. I told everybody on Thursday that it was a no-brainer to pick the Packers to win and cover that 6.5 point spread. I knew it was going to be an ugly same old Lions Sunday, and it was. The Lions lost 42-21. Once again, they had an early lead. They had a double-digit lead. It was a 14-3 lead after scoring touchdowns on their first 2 possessions of the game and holding Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to just a field goal. Things were looking good, but all that did was get them into the record books because they lost that game, and they became the first team in NFL history to lose 4 consecutive games after holding a double-digit lead. The Lions love setting records, but only the bad records, like most road losses, and then breaking most road losses, and then 0-16, and now 4 straight double-digit leads leading to a loss. Of course, it was the last 2 games of 2019, leading by 17 last week and leading by 11 against the Packers. They went from having a balanced offense the first 2 possessions of the game to everything just going into the pits, with the Packers finishing on a 38-7 run. A lot of folks were to blame for this game. You could look at wealthy quarterback Matthew Stafford, not good after the first 2 drives. You could look at the offensive line giving up 4 sacks and not doing much for the run game after the first couple drives. You could look at the dumb penalties the dumb personal foul penalty by Ibushi for 15 yards that led to the Lions' first punt. You could look at the dumb back-to-back penalties by Will Harris. You blame him for the loss. You could blame Jeff Okudah. Number 3 overall pick, made his NFL debut, and he got burned more than Tease the Snail Tabor. And, of course, there's the leader of the team, Matt Patricia, who is, with that pencil in his ear, engineered this record-breaking performance of 4 consecutive double-digit leads blown for a loss. Dennis, who do you blame for this same old Lions loss?
Well, if I had a pencil right now, I'd snap it in half, to tell you who I blame. It's the worst head coach in NFL history, the defensive wizard, Matt Patricia. He has been terrible since game 1 against the Jets. He lost his team in that preseason, and everything in the wake has been horrible since then. You know what? A lot of it last year, I thought, really was the injuries, although he was zigging and trying some different things while other teams were zagging, which I appreciated. But, the proof was in the pudding. He couldn't get any pressure. And then it's just followed up this year. And he's got injuries again. That is part of it. But you know what? He's a really bad football coach. He's a bad defensive football coach. There was a reason that Bill Belichick doubled back and wanted Josh McDaniels after that Eagles loss. They went to reel him in. They didn't even say anything to Patricia. And nobody in Boston wanted him. It's just been a sad state of affairs. This thing hopefully is over very soon with him being the head coach. And, it's one of these things, like, I know this gets really repetitive, but everybody should be fired. And it's up to Sheila Hamp now to get in there, whether it's if she wanted to do it after a blowout loss in Arizona, fine. If they lose to the Saints the following week, then I think everybody is targeting that date. That'd be, October the 5th. We should all hope that she just blows everybody out at that point. And then really you could have a renewed awakening here, or you would at least have some hope, because you would have all of the principal positions. Everybody would be new. I mean, Sheila Hamp has only been on the job here just for a couple months, and she did put her name on that competition, playoff competition letter. That's the only thing that I really know from her, but she could curry a lot of favor. She blew everybody out. Then you could have a new GM, a new coach. They would get rid of Stafford after this year. It looks like they're trending, of course, to be a bottom 5 team, and there's 3 quarterbacks to be had. So, there is an upside here. There's a part about this that sucks, that the season's over before it started, but that's not our fault.
Nope.
No, if the lousy rookie could have, if the rookie could have caught a lousy pass there at the end, at least we're going to be talking about, hey, you know what? Even a terrible performance in Green Bay by the defense, nobody predicted them to lose there, but this thing's gone belly up pretty quick.
Yeah, it has. And as far as who I blame for the loss, is the same person as you. I'll put up what I tweeted after the game, and I point my bony finger of blame directly at Matt Patricia. Supposed to be a defensive genius, couldn't stop the run. I mean, think about that. Lions fans were going into that game thinking, all right, we got this depleted secondary. How in the world are we going to stop Aaron Rodgers? He's going to pick our secondary apart with MVS and Lazard and Devontae Adams. They're just going to destroy us. Aaron Rodgers could throw for 500 yards. Aaron Rodgers didn't throw for half of that. He was actually only 18 for 30. What destroyed the Lions was the running game. They gave up 259 yards on the ground on 35 carries, as you can see right there in the box score. But you've got to expect a defensive genius to be able to do more than that to stop the run. And I'm not going to sit here and blame Nick Williams for all that. But I guess at the very least he didn't say, well, look what I did a decade ago when I called that brilliant play, because nobody cares about that anymore. That's a great thing for New England, but not for Detroit. You talk about firing everybody. Look, I'm not going to sit here and give some big angry diatribe about how it's unacceptable and it's a joke. And that's because this was not an epiphany for me that just happened before or right after the game or right after the Bears game or right after the 2019 season. I called for Matt Patricia's firing after his first season in 2018 when he failed to meet the Bob Quinn standard of winning at least 10 games. Remember? Jim Caldwell fired after not winning more than 9 games. He came in there, won 6 games, and now 34 games in, he still has not reached the 10-win threshold, not just in the season, but overall. But I said that I could tell after his first year that he was a joke. I know that a lot of folks out there say you can't fire a coach after 1 year. That's not fair. You don't know enough. I did know, and I have a good track record because I also said that Brad Ausmus deserved to be fired after his first year, and I was right about that. But look, when I see him breaking a record for the most blown double-digit leads, that's on coaching. They come in there with this dagger time slogan this year, and the first time they have a chance to stick the dagger in a team, it's a team that's not expected to fare well. You have a 17-point fourth quarter lead and blow it. Then you decide, well, we need to get off to a hotter start. You're up 14-3, and then you score 7 points the rest of the way, and the defensive genius gives up 38 of the next 45 points. I mean, look, yes, he deserves to be fired, but I want to say this. I think a great shame should fall upon a lot of people in the Detroit media, and that includes you, because a lot of people in the Detroit media, if you ask them before the season, do they have a great coach? People would say, no, Matt Patricia's terrible. Do they have a great roster? No, they got rid of their best player. It's a weak roster. And despite that, the vast majority of Detroit sports media said that they would win at least 7 games. If not 8, you said 9. And now we're sitting here with this same terrible coach, with the same terrible roster that we knew before the season. Yeah, they've had some injuries, and they're 0-2. I used my Penn State brain to add those same 2 factors up and compute a 5-11 record. I don't understand how so many people got tricked.
Well, you can shame me all you want. I'm not going to get on one knee or anything. I'm sorry that I picked him to go and have 9 wins. They should have won already, if not for that bad drop. And you know what? It's too bad that Kenny Golladay hasn't been available. I think that would have unlocked the offense. They could have been a lot more competitive. And, I thought with a healthier defense in the third year that they might be able to get some pressure here. But, that was the big problem. And, things as the games go by, you get more information. It's another thing that watching Aaron Jones, having the team misaligned and watching him just go untouched up in the middle, that was sickening. But you know what? Aaron Jones picked in the 5th round a couple of years ago out of UTEP. And then you looked at Bob Quinn's draft this year in the 5th round. They picked a running back. Guy couldn't even make it out of training camp. It's one thing after the other. They have not drafted anybody on defense that has helped. I thought that they got a steal a couple of years ago, taking him out of Alabama. Mm-hmm. But, he's been hurt. Nobody's liked his first 2 games here. So that seems to be diminishing here. Nobody that they've drafted over on that defensive side, Jared Davis, Tavai, the Snail, Tracy Walker, there's one that they reached for that was a good pick. He seems like he's a serviceable player, but it's over. It's over for Quinn. It's over for Patricia. It sure seems like that. And now, the direction needs to be on Sheila Hamp. she may catch a little bit of a break because after the Lions lose to the Cards this week, they would be limping home 0-3, and there would be a lot of people showing up with paper bags and booing up to the luxury suite up there, telling her, let's go. But there won't be anybody. It'll just be a quiet mausoleum that the Lions will lose to Drew Brees and the Saints coming up in 2 weeks. So
they could pump some cheers in there.
Yeah, well, they can pump some boos in too.
Yeah, I don't think that they'll boo a bad call by the referees, perhaps, or a bad challenge. That's about it. But you mentioned they haven't drafted well, and one of the guys that they drafted, the most recent first-round draft pick, was Jeff Okudah. He made his debut with the Lions on Sunday after missing the first game with a hamstring injury, and a lot of Lions fans were interested to see how he would fare. Obviously, he was being thrown to the Wolves, having to go up against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and we're going to do a little something different. We've got a little film study for you guys. I want to give you a couple of highlights, really not highlights, lowlights of what Jeff Okudah did, because really, when I said before at the start of this segment that he got burned just like Tease Tabor, I meant it. But here's an example of what Jeff Okudah was doing on Sunday. Jeff Okudah is right there matched up against, I believe that's Davante Adams, and check out what happens.
Ball a whole lot in that opening quarter. It was 10 minutes for the Lions.
Boom! Broken ankles. Look at that again.
Quarter was 10 minutes for the Lions.
Snap of a finger, he gets 5 yards of separation.
Quarter was 10 minutes for the Lions.
If you look at it, you see that Jeff Okudah doesn't even make a quick turn back towards Davante Adams. He just stands there and looks at him running away. I've never seen anything like that. And then I got another clip I want to show you a little bit later on in the game. It comes from the second half. And it's another example of Jeff Okudah just flat out, getting burned and not looking athletic. And this one is against, I believe, is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And there he is covering right there.
Rodgers has time. Deep down the sideline.
He just gets burned.
Catch is made.
Just absolutely gets burned. And, those are just two examples, but it happened all throughout the game. You see Jeff Okudah not looking athletic at all. Some folks calling him a bust already. I've seen 80-year-olds with replaced hips who have better reactions than that. Dennis, what did you think of that?
Well, if I didn't know that was the number 3 overall pick, and I just you told me that was like a free agent corner, I would have said, well, they'll have to cut him after the game. That's how bad it was. And I blame Matt Patricia and Corey Undland. Give the rookie some help over the top. You put him out there on an island against Davante Adams with no pass rush and no help over the top, man. Talk about deflating for the kid. It's not going to get any better for him. Hopkins is coming up this week. Then it's going to be Michael Thomas. Then it's going to be, pick your poison, Julio Jones, against the Falcons coming up, or Calvin Ridley. So this is just going to continue. But I blame the Lions staff. The kid, had a hamstring his first week, so he's just getting out there. What an embarrassment for this coaching staff to leave him hanging out to dry like that. It's been pointed out that there was a top 10 pick from the Jags, Henderson from Florida. He was the defensive rookie of the week, week number 1. There's been some other rookies that have acquitted themselves pretty good, but yeah, terrible start for Okudah, but it kind of fits right into, it's very on brand for the Lions. Put your top rookie out there and he embarrasses himself, but the staff didn't do him any favors either. So
it was.
Yeah, I'm not going to put the boss label on it, but it was a terrible debut.
It was unbelievably bad, but I think that the key, and here's something, if you're a big Lion slappy out there, you know what you do as a Lion slappy. If you hear somebody criticizing Matt Stafford, you make an excuse. Criticizing the rocket scientists, you make an excuse. Criticizing the Lions defense, you make an excuse. And Lion slappies, because they don't have anything concrete to fall back on, are always looking for an excuse. I've got an excuse for Lion slappies with regard to Jeff Okudah's play. And it is something that Dennis brought up, and it's the hamstring injury. Because when he was at Ohio State, obviously he was playing against the best wide receivers they had in the conference, guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was a 6th-round pick by the Browns and was inactive for the game against the Bengals. But obviously Davante Adams is much better than that. But when you see him, particularly on that juke move by Davante Adams, just stand there I mean, literally just stand there like he didn't know what was going on. I have to imagine that his hamstring is not 100%. It caused him to miss the game against the Bears, and when you see him getting burned, and he didn't run a 4.740 like Tease the Snail Tabor, when you see him unable to keep up with multiple receivers when they make a juke, hamstring injuries, when you're recovering, when you still have when they're still feeling ginger, you're not going to cut hard. So I would say, look, he wasn't ready. Perhaps they needed to sign a practice squad guy to play as opposed to Okudah because he wasn't ready and he wasn't healthy. But I think that saying he wasn't healthy is a legitimate excuse because there's no way he's that bad. There's no way that his athleticism is that poor.
Yeah, Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk are all sitting over there like, woo. And I just can't, Kyler Murray, the way he's looked in the first two games against that Lions defense, I can't believe that they're going to be able to contain the second-year quarterback out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, we got some feedback?
Yes. Where should we start? Let's go to YouTube. And we've got what they call their live chat. And we start out with Keith, who's on the live chat, who says, "What's up? My man Dennis picked the Lions to win 9 games. I'm not going to live that down. I can tell that. I told them they would win 5 games. They have no defensive playmakers, and it's the same story every year. I hate the Lions, and Quinn is incompetent. Tavai in the second round is a joke. DK Metcalf is obviously an offensive player I thought they should have picked, or Greedy Williams. The Patriots defense got better the last 2 years after Patricia left. I said the same thing, chap. They should have been fired a year and a half ago. That defense was so shameful last year." That's from Keith. Lawrence on Facebook. Hey, it's good to see him on there. He's like, he says MP has to go.
Matt Patricia.
Jeff Scott is just giving a thumbs up to the 5th chapter. So there you go. Yeah, like, you know what? You could say, oh, yeah, Lion fans, this is typical of them screaming about the coach getting fired. Most people wanted Matt Patricia fired after last year. We had seen it off. After 2 years, it was just a complete just the only thing, he got lucky that Stafford got hurt because the defense gave him a bailout at that point. And I think that's a lot of the reason that they're able to come back. It's like, oh, they were doing okay until Stafford got hurt, even though they were under 500. But the defense has been so bad for the 2 years, and then they picked up right where they left off. So, you know what? I was hoping, I thought that, they got hit with some injuries, especially on that defensive line last year. Hand, Mike Daniels, to name 2. And I could sit around talking about Trufant being out, and then
Coleman.
Coleman. I mean, those are 2 really important corners. But, man, you've got to not be aligned right on that Aaron Jones run. It's like, man, that's high school stuff. It really is. Patricia should fire Undland. He should, fire himself. Like, and they've got a chance. You can say, well, if they go out and beat the Cardinals, things change. They do. But is anybody think that the Lions are going to go out to Arizona and beat the Cardinals?
I think the Cardinals are 5.5-point favorites. So especially if the cornerback situation stays the same, I think it's a clear, easy victory for the Lions. I'm sorry, for the Cardinals, and folks should pick the Cardinals to cover. One other thing I think we should point out is, in a bad 21-point loss like this, you're going to have a bunch of same old Lions moments. And I want to know what you thought the same old Lions moment of the game was. You could look at Abushi's penalty on the 3rd drive of the game, the personal foul that led to the first punt. You could look at the back-to-back Will Harris penalties, 15 yards apiece, that led to the go-ahead touchdown for the Packers. You could look at Matt Stafford's awful sack late in the game, and you could also look at Matthew Stafford's pick 6. Perhaps there's another one you could look at. What was your same old Lions moment of the game?
Well, there's so many to choose from, but I would narrow it down to 2. One, that Aaron Jones, was it a 75-yard run where he goes right up the middle, and the Lions aren't set up in an alignment. They had no chance on that. And you go untouched that way, and the safeties are diving at him. It's either that or Stafford throwing that pick 6 where, he's in his 12th year. He looked like he was a rookie on that one. Inexcusable there for number 9, who I like, but you can't be throwing at the other team like that. And effectively was the dagger. Dagger time fit there.
Yeah.
That was the dagger of the game.
Yeah, I picked Will Harris's consecutive 15-yard penalties. Second quarter, 14-10 Lions lead. Okuda gets burned because that's just what happened when you have a bad hamstring and all that. The pass is incomplete, and Will Harris comes in and drills a defenseless receiver for a 15-yard penalty. And then the very next play gets called for a horse collar tackle. 2 plays, 30 yards, and the Packers didn't need any help. They end up getting a touchdown before the half when the Lions had a chance to perhaps force a punt or a field goal because they scored 2 plays later. And that was it. I put up a tweet asking people the same question, what was the same old Lions moment of the game? And they chose, as you can see, Matthew Stafford's pick six. 39.2% said the pick six. 31.4% agreed with me. I didn't have that run up the middle that you're talking about, 75 yards. But Twitter only gives you 4 options. So.
All right, let's get to chapter 2.
Yep, let's turn the page.
Yeah, that takes us to the aforementioned quarterback of the Detroit Lions, Matt Stafford. We just talked about how he played before the game. He took a knee, and this is a season that was it last week or before the season that he wrote an open letter about how he has changed his approach and how he thinks about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, just a few days ago.
It wasn't just a few days ago, and then he backed it up by going out and taking a knee before the game. So what do you think? What do you think about Matt Stafford and his performance off the field?
Yeah, pulling a Colin Kaepernick, and it's actually interesting that a lot of people aren't up in arms about this when 4 years ago they were up in arms about Kaepernick doing this, and a lot of folks still don't want Kaepernick back in the league. They don't want Colin Kaepernick to be the backup quarterback of the Lions or whatever their team is. That's not the case with everybody, but there are a lot of folks who said, I'll burn my jersey, I'll get rid of my season tickets, I'll never watch another Lions game if they sign Colin Kaepernick. And guess what? Matthew Stafford is doing not something similar, not something reasonably similar. He's not taking a knee because the Lions are closing out a victory because, well, the Lions don't do that. They don't really have dagger time. That's just a quote, but they're not actually doing it. He's doing the exact same thing as Colin Kaepernick. He's protesting during the national anthem by taking a knee, and we don't hear a peep. I don't hear folks. I didn't see anybody. I've listened to some talk radio the last week and a half, and this is the second week in a row that he's pulled a Kaepernick. Haven't heard anybody say, "Hey, we got to get rid of Matthew Stafford because he's taking a knee." I haven't heard anybody say, "Hey, President Trump said that folks like that are sons of bitches and deserve to be fired. We need to follow what Trump says and make the Lions great again by firing that SOB." I haven't heard. I've seen only a couple of folks on social media say that they're not going to watch the Detroit Lions because of that. But this is Matthew Stafford, the highest paid player on the team, taking knees. And not just that. Check out this tweet from Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press from just before the game started at 12:58. A large portion of the Lions team is again going to the locker room for the national anthem. Matthew Stafford taking a knee again, others standing, and the Packers' entire team is in the locker room. Think about that. Where's the backlash? It seems like folks only want to target their angst or their anger towards Colin Kaepernick, but Matthew Stafford's doing the exact same thing. I think that folks right now, in terms of how they view Stafford and how their approval rating for him is dropping, are looking solely at what he does on the football field, which is kind of interesting because he's doing, once again, the exact same thing as Colin Kaepernick.
Well, it's hard to lump, people all into, this category or that category. I think what's changed since Colin Kaepernick is that, socially people have evaluated it, and I think we have evolved. There's not everybody, but a lot of people have evolved in how they've looked at the situation. I remember after the first day, I was like, hey, you know what, Colin Kaepernick, if he doesn't like the country, why doesn't he just leave? And then it was pointed out like, hey, this was a nonviolent protest. He's drawn attention to the police brutality, and I examined it. And the very next day I came out and said, hey, you know what? I understand what Colin Kaepernick's is doing here. Let's have some empathy for our friends and our neighbors in the black community who are scared, and talk to people, talk with a lot of people about it. Continue to do that. Not everybody sees it like that. People, take it as an affront that never have yielded. Always think that it's black and white. You take a knee, you're a son of a bitch. They kind of fall in with Trump there, but take the politics out. And to me, I just look at an issue. He's showed some empathy. He's did a leadership role, and it was an encouraging thing, for him. Even in the offseason when he had that tweet and said, "Yeah, I'm going to be the MVP." That's something really out of character for Matt Stafford. But both he and his wife Kelly, taking a look at the Black Lives Matter movement, I thought that was a very positive thing for him, for Detroit, for the organization. It gets put in the rearview mirror because the Lions' ineptness has taken over, the top 10 stories in this town. If the Lions would have won that first game, somehow would have found a way to win that game at Lambeau, and they were sitting here 2-0, people would be talking about Stafford being the toast of the town. Look at his leadership. Look what he's doing, the social issues and everything else. But, that gets buried because the Lions are 0-2, and everybody should be fired.
Yeah, and I think actually when you're playing poorly, it most of the time people say, well, especially if they are opponents to anthem kneeling, they'll say, oh, and he's kneeling for the anthem. If he was looking like Russell Westbrook in his first two games and he was looking like an MVP candidate, folks wouldn't care at all. It seems right now folks don't care at all. Although I did put up a Twitter poll about this, and it appears that some folks care about it, because I asked if the Lions should fire Stafford or blackball him like Kaepernick, and only 57.7% said they're okay with him kneeling, and 42.3% said that he should be fired because he doesn't love the United States of America.
Where's the tweet?
Oh, there it is. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, there. Now you can see it. 57.7%
I've got to be able to
are okay.
see it.
Yes.
I've got to be able to see it.
Everybody else does too. So.
Yeah, well, we like your Twitter work. We like your Twitter polls. I get feedback up there. Where's more chat Twitter polls?
Yeah, well, I've got them coming. But, yeah, look, when for me and you, we don't really care what he does for the national anthem, stand, kneel, sit on the bench, go in the locker room, whatever. But I think that Matthew Stafford's approval rating is mediocre to low right now in Detroit, perhaps for some because of the anthem kneeling. But I think for a lot of it's because of what he does on the field. I've said for so many years that Matthew Stafford does not perform well all the time. Sometimes he'll perform well for half the season, but not the other half. Sometimes it'll be half the game, but not the other half. You look at what he's done in this season. It wasn't all that good in the first 20 minutes of the game against the Bears. And then that middle 15 to 20 minutes, he led them to 3 straight drives, 17 points, and then nothing after that. And then you look at the game on Sunday against the Packers. 2 consecutive touchdown drives, was leading them down the field once again until the Ibushi penalty, and then only 7 points the rest of the game. He was a mixture of mediocre and terrible after that 14-3 lead, and that's not what you expect from the highest paid player in your franchise's history. Taking that sack, taking that terrible pick 6, missing open receivers, just not good enough. And then if you are one of those folks that's a patriotic bully and gets angry and frustrated when someone won't stand for the anthem with a tear in their eye and their hand on their chest, and you see that he's kneeling just like Kaepernick, that probably adds to it.
Yeah, the first 2 games have been a microcosm of his career. There's some things like, oh, okay, hey, and then you could point to some meltdowns and just inexplicable passes, bad sacks, and that's Matt Stafford. Pretty good at times, sometimes pretty bad, but not an elite quarterback. And it really feels like, I know I've said this probably 5-6 times in my life, that this is the last year that he'll be in Detroit. I like Matt Stafford, but I think this is it for him. Although I don't think he'll be able to get anything at the trading deadline for him. It's got to be a unique situation because of the money that he makes and how that he still has years left on his contract, but maybe there's a will, there's a way. Don't completely rule it out. Keith, SOL moment. Them taking a 14-3 lead, then getting hammered. That's what is coming in on the
That's more of an
live
SFL
chat.
performance than an SOL moment. Blowing a 14-3 lead and getting into the record books for most blown most blown double-digit leads, that's an SOL performance. A moment would be the pick six, or the 75-yard run, or the back-to-back penalties, or you look back at the previous game, headbutting the referee. Just stupid stuff like that.
It's not fun. It's not funny to me. Not funny to me that they're in this situation.
It is
I
to
love
me.
football. I enjoy watching the team. I expect
I do
more
too.
from them. But, laugh. I don't know.
I enjoy laughing at them.
Yeah, I know you do.
It doesn't raise my blood pressure on a Sunday.
I can tell.
All right, let's turn the page to the third chapter. And that takes us to the Big Ten, who for the third time this year released their schedule. I guess their first schedule probably came out a couple years ago once all the non-conference games were put together. But they put out their second schedule once they decided they were going to be going to an all Big Ten schedule. And then, of course, the third schedule came out just last week. And I can put up the schedule so that everybody can see it and point out some of the highlights of this 2020 schedule. As you can see right there, the teams are listed on top. You got on the left side the date, and of course the 9th week is the Big Ten Champions Week, East versus West, 1 through 7 playing each other. But you look at some of the highlights, and Nebraska's crossovers, Penn State and Ohio State. Not given any favors by Kevin Warren after threatening to leave the conference for a season. Michigan and Michigan State, that game is being played in week 2. Also in week 2, Penn State versus Ohio State, the annual Big Ten East championship game. You got the Michigan crossovers as Minnesota and Wisconsin, who were the top 2 in the West last year. Michigan State's crossovers are Iowa and Northwestern, the 3rd and 7th teams in the West. And then you got Wisconsin avoiding Penn State and Ohio State in the crossovers, while the Buckeyes crossovers are Nebraska and Illinois. Dennis, starting first with your boys from Michigan, what did you think about the schedule?
Yeah, I thought Michigan and Nebraska got hammered. Michigan has to play the 2 top teams in the West. That's tough for them. I'm not going to cry about that because I'll anticipate big-time matchups and top 25 games a lot more than if it was like the bottom of the barrel. If that was Northwestern they were leading off with, I wouldn't be as excited about the game. If that was Illinois, I wouldn't be sitting around as excited the week off and have the anticipation that I would because it's going to be Wisconsin. So I'm fine with Michigan getting a gauntlet. If I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'd throw it down and say, hey, we got a chance. We got the toughest schedule here in the Big Ten. Let's go out, run the table, and show everybody we can do it. And so from that standpoint, I'm not crying that Michigan got a tough schedule. I embrace it. I do think, though, and if you're going to ask me the question about Ohio State getting the cupcake and easy draw, I completely understand why Kevin Warren and Barry Alvarez, the Wisconsin AD, who was part of the subcommittee and for the scheduling, why they gave him a cakewalk. You get $6 million if you're a conference that puts a team in the college football playoff. And if I'm sitting there with the 14 other representatives from all the schools and I'm Kevin Warren and say, look, we've got this one-off season where we can just come up with these 2 games here. Let's give the team that has the best chance to get to the college football playoff the easiest path to get there, and that's what they did for Ohio State. I don't have a problem with that. I think they would have done that if Nebraska was the number 2 rated team in the country. They wouldn't be playing the 2 toughest teams in the crossover. This is about a money move. All of the teams get to split that revenue equally. That's why they did it. I don't have any problem with it. You know what? Nick Saban for years, he rose up to the top, has won 6 college football. You can make a case that, he's the most accomplished, greatest college football coach ever. Alabama's not going anywhere and playing anybody on the road in a true road game. They'll play a bigger name team like USC or something. They're going to play them in Dallas. They're not going to go out to California. They're not coming up north. They can pick and choose because they're Alabama. When you're a big dog and you can help them out and it helps you and it helps them, it helps the conference, it's the move you make. I would say that every person that is honest. And if they were sitting in Chicago with Kevin Warren and advising Barry Alvarez on the schedule, they would have done the same thing.
I mean, look, Ohio State doesn't have Nebraska. I'm sorry, Northwestern, but Nebraska and Illinois, I think both of those teams won. I think Illinois just was barely bowl eligible with 6 wins, and that's thanks to a couple of non-conference cupcakes. And then Nebraska, they've been a bottom feeder. That's yeah, you're right. This was a money grab. This is just about, hey, let's ensure that not just Ohio State, but Wisconsin has the easiest yellow brick road to the conference championship game as well. I know that you would say, hey, they got to go on the road to play Michigan, but there's no fans in Ann Arbor, and they avoid Penn State and Wisconsin. So
and Ohio State.
I'm sorry, yeah, Wisconsin avoids Penn State and Ohio State. That's what I meant to say.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that is. The favorite in the West and the favorite in the East have favorable schedules to go 8-0 to start the season. As far as Michigan is concerned, yeah, they've got some tough crossovers. No, Penn State doesn't suck, but they've got some tough crossovers at Wisconsin and home against, at Minnesota to start the season and at Wisconsin. I think that they're going to struggle to split those 2 games. You mentioned, I think that you mentioned that you have Minnesota beating Michigan in the opener, and
that was a private conversation that we had. But you're right, I do right now.
Wasn't it also public?
Oh yeah, I guess I did say it on the radio earlier today.
Yeah.
And that's based on Rashad Bateman coming back and Ambry Thomas.
Is he coming back?
And Nico Collins not to. He's practicing, and he's
okay.
trying to get a waivers, but it's not official yet. But I'm anticipating that he is going to be back, and Thomas and Collins are not.
This first game is going to be huge for Michigan, because if they can't beat Minnesota on the road with no crowd, then it's hard to see them having a winning season, and there's a shot of them having a losing season. If I put that schedule back up so you can see it one more time, you see they start off with Minnesota, and then they go on the road. Then they host Michigan State, which should be a victory with a new coach, a terrible new quarterback and all that. But then you're talking about Indiana on the road. That's a tricky team. Then hosting Wisconsin, that's looking like a loss. At Rutgers should be a win. Hosting Penn State, which is a better team than them, that's looking like a loss. Hosting Maryland, and then at the Deep South Buckeyes, in each quarter of the season, Minnesota in the first quarter, Wisconsin in the second quarter, Penn State in the third quarter, and Ohio State in the fourth quarter, there's a big potential for a loss. And Indiana, I would put that right up there with Minnesota, particularly since it's on the road, as a swing game. If Michigan can win those 2 swing games, then they've got a good chance at a winning record. If they start off the season 1-2 with their only win coming against the Michigan State Spartans, then it's going to be a really, really long year, even though it's an 8 to 9 game season for the Wolverines in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, bring it on. I think that the one thing here, Michigan's been practicing since late July, and I think coaching is going to really matter. They've got their coordinators back, and to me, it's going to come down. Jalen Mayfield was huge coming back, so they got their 2 tackles and Hayes and Mayfield now back. That interior of their offensive line is big, but you know what? They got Big Joe Milton. He's 6'5", can throw the ball all over the yard. It's going to be his first start coming up against Minnesota. But you know what? How you win games and how you rise to the top of the conference is having the most important position, be an impact player. Mm-hmm. And Joe Milton could be that. We'll see. I'm not over here telling you he's going to win the Heisman Trophy or he's going to be, the next Cam Newton or anything else. He can throw the ball 85 yards, 70 with ease, and he looks like a super athlete. So he beat out a guy that I was anticipating more than any other player in Michigan history making his debut in Dylan McCaffrey. So,
I forgot about that.
Hopefully he's the goods for the Wolverines, and that's how you surprise people, and that's how you contend for a championship, having a great player at that position.
And it would be a surprise because he's going into his 3rd year, and in each of his first 2 years, he could not get past Dylan McCaffrey on the depth chart for number 2, and he could not get past Shea Patterson for number 1. Shea Patterson, a quarterback who had high expectations, just like every Michigan quarterback does, and after his Michigan career ended, did not get drafted, was signed to the roster of the Chiefs, and has been since cut and not picked up by anybody. That's who Joe Milton couldn't beat out. I know that there are high expectations, and a lot of times you can say, well, he wasn't going to beat out Shea Patterson, and he's only in his third year. Trevor Lawrence is in his third year, and everyone thinks he's going to be the number one pick. Justin Fields is in his third year, and everyone thinks he's going to be a top 5 pick. And now we're looking at Joe Milton. He's in his third year, and there's hope around him. But when you see number one, who he didn't beat out, and number two,
not every quarterback is Trevor Lawrence and hits the ground running. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. There've been plenty of examples of guys that have blossomed after being at different stops or taking a couple of years. And then they've turned out to be fantastic. So
it helps if you have a strong returning offensive line, and it helps if you don't have Tariq Black, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Nico Collins, 3 of your top 4 receivers, leaving. So it's going to be tough for him. What do you think about Michigan State's schedule?
Yeah, I think they should start out the Mel Tucker campaign, and for the era, I guess that's the word I was searching for there. They're going to start out the Mel Tucker era with a W against Rutgers, but then I think it's going to be uphill. After that, they don't have a quarterback, and they're transitioning. They're going to have smaller linebackers. It's not going to look like a D'Antonio defense over there. But when you don't have a quarterback to lean on, and Mel Tucker barely knows any of his guys except to look at him like we are right now, hasn't really had to have get his hands on his players. That's a huge problem. Not being able to got in late, doesn't know his players here. It's just up against it. That's why Michigan State didn't want to play. They'll be lucky to get to 500, but they should start out with a W against Rutgers. That's what I would say.
Yeah, they should. But I think it's not a guarantee. I don't know what the opening line is. If it's Rutgers plus 14, I would take 14 points, no question about that. You think about how Michigan State has struggled in the past. They've got a new coach. Both teams have new coaches. When it comes to Mel Tucker, did Michigan State really upgrade? Obviously, D'Antonio was not good his previous couple of years, but he was good overall. The best football coach in Spartan history. But you look at what Rutgers got with Greg Schiano. He is their best coach in team history, and he's coming back. That's a significant upgrade. They also brought in Taulia Tagovailoa to be a credible quarterback for the Scarlet Knights. Now, they've been bringing in 2-star talent for years, so they don't have the same.
I think Maryland got to his brother, not Rutgers.
Oh, no, you're right about that. All right, well, still, Schiano, he's had more time than Mel Tucker's had, and he's in terms of what they're proven, I think Schiano's is proven, at least so far, to be better than Tucker. Michigan State should win this. If they lose, then we're talking about no wins for the Spartans until Maryland and Northwestern in the second half of the season, and they finish with Ohio State and Penn State. So it's definitely a must-win for the Spartans against Rutgers.
The lesson here is that Michigan State didn't make a peep, during the shutdown and cancellation of the Big Ten season, and they were rewarded with Rutgers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Nebraska wasn't, and I'm glad that you brought them up, because Nebraska was complaining. They were saying we're gonna get out of the Big Ten, and we're assessing our options, and they were faced with Penn State and Ohio State as the crossovers. Their athletic director spoke with the Omaha World Herald after the release of the Big Ten schedule. I want to read to you guys some of the quotes. The guy's name is Bill Moose, the athletic director from Nebraska, and after finding out that they were playing Ohio State on the road to start out their said, quote, "I wasn't toasting champagne." Also, later on in this interview, he said, "For obvious reasons, I was hoping we could disassemble the schedule because of unique circumstances and rebuild it to be fair for each school in the conference. I was outspoken on that to the point where they heard from me every day." He said, "I didn't think we needed to follow it. Nebraska's playing 5 AP preseason top 25 teams. Ohio State's playing 2. Obviously, the Buckeyes can't play themselves." He said, "I'm sure my friend, Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith, is smiling today. His friend Bill Moose is not." And then look at this, this group of excuses. Lost out on that. And then you look at when we're playing and who we're and where. It's a disadvantage to Nebraska with a young team, youth coming up at Columbus against the number 2 team in the country. Fans and no fans is a giant task, especially when it's the first post-COVID game. Note, it's the first post-COVID game for the Buckeyes too. First time we're on a charter aircraft. First time we're in a hotel. First time everybody's on the sideline has masks on. First time with electronic whistles. Everything's going to be, every excuse in the book. And then he decides, I'm going to write my own book with more excuses. Where? Moral of the story, don't bitch about not playing football for safety reasons and saying we're threatening to leave the conference.
Hey, you know what? Chartering out to a game at Ohio State, there's worse things than taking a charter and, staying in first-class hotels. You know what? Well, they're lucky, Nebraska is, that, they're not being sent to the Big Ten East and swapping them out with Maryland. Kevin Warren could have said, hey, you guys, here's a little other memo. Don't sue the Big Ten Conference. You know what?
Yeah, that's
that
right.
was as much as anything else, that they're trying to jam them up there. So, yeah, they're lucky they're still in the Big Ten West. How do you think Maryland feels, man? They got to play all these teams every single year. So, just take your lumps. And, if you don't want to go charter, I've been on a few charter flights with some teams, man. It's pretty nice. It's more than first class. So they'll be all right.
Yeah,
they'll be all right.
I would think so, too.
Hey, and you know what? I think Ryan Day, he wants to put 100 up on Michigan. He might put 100 up on Nebraska.
Yeah, as bad as they are. You want to get to some feedback, or you want to go to the 4th chapter?
Well, let's see. We've got some feedback here. We've got Keith who says Joe Burrow took a few years. Finally, a good quarterback will certainly help. But he says, I have no faith in Harbaugh. I wish I felt different, but he hasn't coached well. And neither has his staff since he's been at U of M. So disappointing. And I'm sick of watching Michigan lose at OSU. It's the same feeling as watching the Lions, and there's no longer a rivalry game. OSU will just mop up the Big Ten no matter who they play. And so if you want to get some feedback in, I see people on Facebook and Twitch. You just go ahead, type it out, and we read it right here on the show.
All right,
it's done.
Yep, let's turn the page now to the 4th chapter.
Yeah, that gets us to Major League Baseball. We're coming down the stretch. The Tigers are out of it. A little bit of a surprise this week. Call it a big surprise. Ron Gardenhire says he's done. He's hanging them up. He's retiring as a Major League manager, so his career in Detroit is over. So that brings up the question of who's next, what you thought of Gardy's retirement, and who is the best fit for the next Tiger manager, and will it matter? Chat.
Yeah, and in terms of some names to put out there, John Palmarosi of Fox Sports put out some names that I can put up in just a minute. And, a lot of them are household names that you've heard of before, a lot of ex-Tigers as well. But you can put me in the camp of it not being a major factor, not really important to me who the next manager is, and that's for a couple of reasons. First, I don't trust Al Avila. I think he's a bad general manager. I don't trust who he thinks is going to come in and turn this team around or take them to the next level with whatever talent he has. I felt that for a couple of years when, I believe it was last year, Chris Ilitch signed or announced that Al Avila was being signed to a multi-year extension. I said that it was a dark day for Detroit Tigers baseball. It was right up there with when we found out that Brad Ausmus was going to be coming back for his 3rd year. I thought that was an equally dark year because you knew that things were just not going to get better. I don't think there's any reason to believe that this team is on the path to the playoffs in the next 4 years. And secondly, the Tigers don't have great talent, good talent, or even okay talent. And a manager does help out a team. They can get the clubhouse in order. They can put the best lineup together, in terms of putting the shifts together, pitching changes, all those types of things. It helps, but there's only so much they can do when they start off the season with Christian Stewart as your starting left fielder. You're screwed as a manager if your $30 million designated hitter is hitting .232 and either the manager is unable to move him from the premium number 3 spot in the order because there's some sort of agreement, or he's too much of a coward to move him from the number 3 spot in the order. Because Miguel Cabrera, if he wasn't Miguel Cabrera and was just a random guy with 7 home runs and .232 batting average, would not still be hitting 3rd, even in the Tigers order. there's only so much you can do if you look at your starting pitchers and you have 0 aces and 0 number 2s. Spencer Turnbull is pitched like a number 3 pitcher this year. Boyd and Fulmer have been 2 of the worst starting pitchers in all of baseball. And Mize and Skubal have each had 6 starts apiece, and neither of them look like stars. That doesn't mean they won't be stars, but you also have players out there who don't need 6 starts to show that their talent in the minors has shown in the majors. Look at guys like Tristan McKenzie from the Indians, Brady Singer from the Royals, Christian Javier from the Astros, or Jesus Luzardo from the A's. You know, having a manager for a talentless team, a great manager for a talentless team that's being run into the ground by Alavila, where guys are coming up and not showing that they're going to be superstars, it doesn't really matter to me who they have as a manager. In terms of who John Palmarosi mentioned, a couple of tweets on Sunday. He said Tigers expected to consider A.J. Hinch, Will Venable, George Lombard, Vance Wilson, Don Kelly, Pedro Grifol, and Mike Redmond. Also internal candidate Lloyd McClendon. Marcus Thames is going to be considered for the vacancy. Obviously, he played for the Tigers for about a half decade. So just some names out there. But to me, when you've got a bad general manager who makes terrible trades, who signs guys like Jordan Zimmerman, and when his players come up to the majors from the minors, they either don't shine or B, look like total train wrecks and disasters, I'm not really all that excited about who the next manager is.
Well, I'd like to see him go outside the organization. You know, that list, Marcus Thames, he is outside the organization. But, I don't like the Don Kelly baby on there. That kind of feels like Jim Leland would have his hands on it. Nothing against legendary Lloyd McClendon or Alan Trammell. But they need to go outside. The 2 guys, the 2 cheaters, are 2 managers that would be pretty high on my list. A.J. Hinch, I know Morosi put him on the list, but Cora's the other one, the ex-Red Sox manager. I would take a look at him. Those would be the 2 guys that would be at the top of my list, unless you could go out there and identify who you thought was the best pitching coach, whether it would be from college or he would be on a major league staff right here, and go out and get him. That's the direction I would want to go. Somebody heavy in analytics. This is an organization that has tried to do some different things here, but their managers don't embrace it. I don't know if their general manager, knows about analytics. He says he does, but this would be Chris Ilitch. This is one of the moves, along with spending money, going out. His dad liked, guys that he would go out and get somebody like a Jim Leland.
Yeah,
if Mike Ilitch was here, I think he would go out and get Hinch or Cora or somebody that. This team's not expected to compete next year. They should be 500, which would be a vast improvement. And then following that, it's time. It's time to spend money, and it's time to contend. So this should be an attractive job. Are you ready to spend the money? This is more on Chris Ilitch. I'll just take the middleman, Alavila, out. Alavila, he could be out of a job here pretty soon. And let's take a look at this manager and really get something going here. To me, it's up to Chris Ilitch to go out there and get one of these big names.
Yeah, I mean, a fundamental disagreement. You say next year is the year for them to be 500. Because of the roster that Alavila has put together, I don't see that, and I don't look at this as being one of the most attractive jobs. If, on the other hand, we had seen Casey Mize and or Tarek Skubal, who's pitching tonight, I don't know how he's faring, but if we had seen one of those guys come out and look like Brady Singer or look like Tristan McKenzie, the stick figure for the Indians, and you say, all right, we got ourselves an ace for the future, not because he looked like it in the minors, but because in 5, 6, 7 starts, he's proved it in the majors, then it looks more appetizing. If you look at that lineup and you say, all right, when I look at who's going to be on my roster in 2022, I can count on more than just Victor Reyes and Jose or Jamer Candelario, and I've got myself an all-star or 2, then this would look like a more appetizing job. But, I mean, you still, who knows who's going to play third base? Who knows who's going to play first base? Infield, the catcher position is an absolute disaster. I don't look at this as one of the most appetizing jobs in the majors right now.
If you're just tuning in, here's a recap of the show. Chap hates the Tigers, the Lions, and the Wolverines and Spartans. So let's get to the final chapter.
Yeah, we can turn the page to the fifth chapter, and that takes us to the major wager. And this is an opportunity for us to give you some betting advice out there on all the games going on. We got the NBA back in action today. We got the Stanley Cup Finals resuming with, I think it's Game 4 tomorrow, and a lot of baseball on the slate as well.
Yeah, you know what? I've been just, after hitting on some basketball and doing pretty well in baseball, I'm in full football mode now, and I split last week. I took the Bills, and they're the lightning delay against the Dolphins. It looked like they were going to lose that game. Then they were covering, man. It looked sweet. And then there was a little backdoor cover by the Dolphins, and they lost that game. But I was all over the Rams, and they got the W. So with the juice on those games, I lost $10. So I'm down to plus 290. I'm going to when you get to these 0-2 teams and 2-0 teams, I like to take a look at teams that are desperate. Their season is just going to be over.
Like the Lions.
Well, but they're the one team that I'm going to stay away from. I am going to go. I'm not going to. And you could make the same case. They might do this in Minnesota. Like the Minnesota's got crushed in their 2 games.
Yeah.
And yet, they're getting 2.5 points at home against a 2-0 Titans team. And I know Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, they are racking it up, but I'm going to play the Vikings here, getting a couple points at home and having that urgency. I like Mike Zimmer. I like some of the talent they have in offense, but I have not liked how Kirk Cousins has been playing here. But I'm going to go with the Vikings here, and I'm back to put a 50 on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump on NFL games just yet, but if I was going to bet, it would certainly be the Cardinals minus 5.5 against the same old Lions. Last Thursday, I was right when I picked the Heat to win straight up against the Celtics in Game 2, so I'm proud of that. Tonight, I'm going with a Major League Baseball game. It hasn't started yet, so there's still time to go to your app or head down to one of the casinos and bet on this game. I've got the Padres minus 1.5 against the Angels at plus 115. The Angels basically have to win out to have a shot at the playoffs, so they're pretty much done. The Padres just clinched a playoff spot. They have a tiny shot to get past the Dodgers, but they're only 2 ahead of the Cubs and the Braves for the number 2 seed. So very important for them to keep on winning. And this game does mean something to them because of that. Zach Davies has been much better this year than Griffin Canning in terms of the pitching matchup. I like the Padres to win and cover. They've got a great offense. They boosted their bullpen, even though it's been underperforming. They boosted their bullpen with some acquisitions at the trade deadline. I like the Padres to win and cover against a late surging but underperforming Anaheim Angels squad.
All right. It sounds like some pretty interesting selections there, Chapman. Thanks for watching here. Coming up on Thursday's show, will Tua Tagovailoa be making his debut? We will talk about that, if he should be, in one of the chapters coming up on Thursday's show in the 5th chapter. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you then.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter. Huh.